Hi, everybody, and welcome to Project Success's Cooking Certificate. So we meet every Wednesday night, and if you have found us, then you are in the right place. If you don't know, during the regular school year, Project Success hosts a cooking certificate every Wednesday evening from 6 o'clock until 8 o'clock at the Project Success Institute, which is a multi-purpose classroom, and it's a whole host of programs that we teach there. So that includes usually some sort of performing art. We do finance, we do cooking, we do coding. However, since we've been on hiatus, we have had to change things around. And so one of the ways in which we've changed things around is we are doing our cooking certificate on Instagram Live, hi Instagram Live, and on YouTube Live, hi YouTube Live. We invite students to cook along with us. Even if you're not a student of the cooking certificate, though, you are welcome to join us. We're not going to check your credentials at the door, especially because tonight we're going to be making chocolate chip cookies. So this is a recipe that I've never tried before. I've made chocolate chip cookies before, but it is such a simple thing that people have such heated debates about. It seems like everybody has a recipe that they believe is the absolute best one, and a lot of us just make the recipe that's on the back of the chocolate chip packet. This recipe comes to us like so many recipes that we've been using since we went online. It comes to us from the folks at Bon Appetit. So I've been waving a banner for those folks since we first got started with all of this. If you don't already subscribe to their YouTube channel, I highly recommend it. Their videos, I think, are really easy to follow, and they can expand your cooking vocabulary like that. So I thought, let's try a Bon Appetit cookie recipe. And I like everything else that we have cooked of theirs, and so I thought maybe I'll like this too. So I'll be cooking this recipe for the first time right along with you. Let's talk about what we are cooking with and what our tools are. So let's start out with ingredients. We've got eggs. We're going to be using 3 eggs in today's recipe, 1 whole egg and 2 egg yolks. So that means that I'm going to be trying another skill I've never tried before, which is separating the white from the yolk. I've always felt like both of those things were fantastic. Why would I want to take them apart from each other? But for this recipe, apparently taking the yolks apart from 2 of the eggs is a good thing to do. So I'm going to attempt it. All right, we're going to be using some flour. This is just all-purpose flour. I'm using 1.5 cups of it. I'm using some baking soda. Got this right out of my freezer. We're going to be using some chocolate chips, although you can use whatever chocolate you want to use. The key thing, though, for this particular recipe, if you're going to do it like they do, is we're using semi-sweet. So we're not using all the way sweet. We're using semi-sweet, so it's a little bit bitter because there's a lot of other sugar that's in this recipe. So we're trying to balance out the sweet with the sour and the salty and all that kind of stuff. Same as we ordinarily would with any other recipe. I got 1/4 cup of granulated sugar. That's just regular sugar you might put in a tea. I have a whole cup of dark brown sugar. What's the difference between light brown sugar and dark brown sugar? The answer is molasses. There are more molasses in dark brown sugar, which is a little bit acidic, and so some of that acid adds to some of that sort of like acidy kind of flavor that we're getting from the semi-sweet chocolate chips. But don't worry, this is not going to be like a bitter cookie. That would be a weird and mean thing to do to you. Let's see, should we take a look at some cooking tools? Oh, we got butter too. Let's look at some cooking tools. I got a couple of bowls out, mixing bowl here. You're going to want to make sure your mixing bowl can handle heat, because one unusual thing about this particular recipe is we are going to be melting butter before we mix it with stuff. A lot of times when you use butter in baking, you cream it together with the sugar. So you just sort of take a whisk and you go really fast like this. Or if you have a mixer, which I'm sure most people don't think is very fancy, but to me that's fancy. I don't have a mixer, I've never had a mixer. You can use one of those as well. But we don't really have to worry about that today because we are using melted butter, which makes things easier. Specifically, we're using brown butter because the brown butter adds flavor to the cookie. Let's see. What other tools? Not a lot of other tools. I'm using an oven here, my janky oven from my apartment. So I'm going to get started here by heating it up to 375 degrees. How many? It's 300 plus 75. Is it 350? No, that's too low. Is it 400 degrees? No, that's too high. It's 375 degrees. Why are we heating to 375 degrees? Well, before I learned this recipe, I would not have been able to tell you that, but I can tell you now that the reason why is it's a little bit higher than we would ordinarily bake cookies at. We would usually bake them like 10 minutes at 350. But the reason why we're baking at 375 is because this particular recipe is a little bit, for lack of a better term, runnier than a lot of other chocolate chip cookie recipes. And if we were to bake it for less time, then we wouldn't get a crisp on the outside, which is what we want. We are aiming for a crisp outside and a chewy center. That's what we're going for, okay? Then the other tool that I'm using is a baking sheet. I haven't taken it out yet, so I'm gonna take it out now, which is gonna make a bunch of noise right here at the beginning of the video, which everybody's gonna love. Here we go. Here's that loud noise. I just have a very loud baking sheet. I can't help it. It's just its personality. Okay, so I'm going to put my baking sheet over here for right now. It's sitting on top of some potatoes. And the other thing we're going to need is parchment paper. If you don't have parchment paper, don't worry about it. It's not a huge deal. You can get by without it. Okay, let's begin. So I started preheating the oven. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a saucepan. They said use a large saucepan. I don't know why. You can use any size you want because all we're going to be doing with it is cooking butter. So I'm going to turn it on to like a medium heat. That'll do. And then I'm going to take an entire stick of butter and I'm going to put it inside my saucepan. This stick of butter does not need to be at room temperature. We're going to be using some butter in a moment that will need to be at room temperature. So if your other stick of butter is not at room temperature, you might want to do the microwave trick on it. What's the microwave trick, James? Well, this is a trick that's been passed down from generation to generation in my family. I'm just kidding, microwaves have only been around for like one generation. The microwave trick is just when you take your butter that you forgot to take out of the fridge before, and you put it in the fridge or put it in the microwave for like 30 seconds. But you stop it after every 10 seconds just to check in on it and see how it's doing. Because if you forget about it and walk away, the whole thing will melt, and that's not what you want. You just want to soften it a little bit. Okay, anyway, right now what we are doing is we are straight up melting with butter. And I can see that it's already begun to melt, so my pan is working. I don't want the butter just to melt, though. I want the butter to brown. So I'm going to let the whole stick melt, and then I'm just going to keep on cooking it for a couple of minutes until that butter, it just begins to bubble, and it literally will turn brown. That's how you can tell that it's brown, is it will actually be brown. Okay, here we go. One of the things that I think about every week when I prepare a recipe for y'all is whether there is any downtime, because sometimes a recipe will say a thing like roast for 15 minutes or like cover and boil for a certain amount of time or whatever, right? Well, obviously with chocolate chip cookies, we're going to have to put them in the oven at some point, and we'll bake them for about 8 to 10 minutes. And you do not want to hear me just stand here and talk for 8 to 10 minutes. That is, I can't think of too many things more boring than that. So I've thought of another way to fill that time. You'll see what it is when we get there. So that's me planting the seeds of suspense early on. See, this is how the pros do it, y'all. Okay, my butter is melted. It's beginning to bubble. I'm going to bring down the heat just a little bit. And I'm waiting for it now to begin to brown. A couple of streaks of brown in there. If yours is going more slowly than mine, don't worry about that. One of the nice things about these videos is that you can always watch them back later on. And there are not very many time-intensive moments in baking cookies. It's not like a lot of the other things that we cook where it's like, oh no, if you didn't get to this part in time, then it's going to turn out wrong. It's probably not really going to happen. The only thing that we could really worry about is if we burn the butter, because then it will make the butter taste acrid, like all things that are burnt. And that probably is not such a nice flavor in cookies, but it seems unbelievable to me that all that sugar would not fix it. You know what I mean? It's hard to mess up cookies because you have a bunch of sugar in there and everybody likes the flavor of sugar. Well, that's not true actually. Through the cooking certificate, I have met people who do not like the flavor of sugar. They don't like sweet things at all. And they don't like mixing sweet things with savory things because they think it ruins it. So my guess is that if you are not somebody who likes the taste of sugar, then you have probably already tuned out. Why would you still be watching? So my butter is taking a little bit longer to brown than I thought, but now I'm looking at my recipe and I am seeing that it says 4 minutes. I wonder how far into 4 minutes we are right now. While you are waiting for your butter to brown, you could be measuring out your other ingredients if you haven't already. So it's 1.5 cups of, is that right? Yep, it's 1.5 cups of flour. And you've got 1 whole cup of brown sugar. You've got 1/4 cup of granulated white sugar. And you have 3 eggs. You got some baking soda, you don't have to measure that out yet. Oh, I got vanilla. I forgot to mention the vanilla before. We're using vanilla as well. So what's happened to my butter is, I'll show it to you, is it started to get frothy on the top here. You're not going to be able to notice on YouTube Live. You can probably tell on Instagram. And now it's browning. That's great. Perfect. Then you're going to take it off the heat as soon as you see it brown. And you're going to add it to a bowl that can take heat. So I'm going to add mine to my, this is a rubberized plastic bowl, so I know that it's not going to melt. Then I'm going to take some more butter. Yes, more butter. It's a 1/2 stick that I'm going to use for this next part, and I'm going to cut it up into little chunks here. So I don't need, my chunks are sort of like if I'm buttering bread. So there we go, 2, 3, 4. That looks like about a 1/2 stick, but I'm going to add just a little bit more. That might be a mistake, we'll see. I love the smell of that brown butter. It smells so nice. It's already kind of a sweet smell. So what you want now is you want this unmelted butter that you've just added here to begin to melt in the melted butter. So you're using that melted butter to melt the other butter. The other butter. And that, it shouldn't melt right away. It's totally fine if it doesn't melt right away. Mine is beginning to melt, but it's not all the way there. Oh, how does that already smell so good? I feel like I would just eat the butter. Is that wrong? I think that's maybe wrong, so I won't do that. Okay, all of my butter is now melted. Maybe yours is, maybe it isn't. Depends on how hot the butter was. So next what I'm going to do is I am going to grab my brown sugar and my white sugar and a whisk. You can use a whisk if you want. You can use a fork if you want. It is up to you. I have a little whisk, which I prefer because it's easier for me to do like this. But you can use a big whisk if you want. In goes the sugar. So that, again, in case you're keeping track of the measurements, that is 1 cup of brown sugar and 1/4 cup of white sugar. And you're going to whisk that together. As they say in the video, there's no way that you're going to be able to make this ungrainy. Like the only way you do that is if you mixed it for like the rest of your life. Please don't make these cookies for the rest of your life. It just feels like a very monotonous existence. Just make them for the next half hour or so with me. But you can make it fairly smooth. You can make this fairly smooth because we're not looking for big chunks or anything like that. Now, I've had my brown sugar clump up on me before, which is always unfortunate. And when that does happen, There are ways of softening it. Look it up on the internet. You'll find all sorts of things. They involve cups of water and microwaves and things like that. Okay, that'll do, I think. So I've got my butter and my sugar mixed in together like that. It's supposed to be pretty viscous. That's fine. I am still seeing that a lot of my butter is kind of sitting on top of the sugar, though. I don't want that. So I'm going to try using a fork instead. All in the wrist. It's all in the wrist. If your mixing is coming from your shoulder is going to get tired and your mixing won't get done. It's a little better. I think maybe I'm just going to have to live with the fact that there's some butter sitting on top there. Okay, next. We are going to let that cool. And we are going to add a cup of sugar. Oh, we already did that. Now we've already done that. Okay, it's time for vanilla. How much vanilla should we use? I'm not looking at the recipe right now, and I didn't write that down, but I know about how much vanilla we usually use in recipes like this. It's about a teaspoon, which is about that much. I eyeballed it. You can measure it out, and if you really want to get it exactly right, then you can check the recipe that's on the Project Success Institute Launchpad, and it will tell you how much vanilla to use. Oh, that smells so good. What is it about vanilla that smells amazing? It's in the beans. So I'm whisking in the vanilla. Okay, now we get to the part that I've never done before, which is we are going to add some eggs, but we aren't going to add 3 whole eggs. We are going to add 1 egg, and then we're going to add 2 egg yolks. So let's start out with the easy part. Here's my 1 egg. I'm just going to crack that in there. So I'm not going to mix it in yet. Okay, next. I'm going to crack this egg in half, and then over the top of this bowl here, I'm going to use the egg halves to separate the yolk from the white. The way I'll do that is I'm just going to keep on passing the yolk back and forth between the 2 egg halves until the white slips out into the bowl here. It's going to be challenging for me to do right in front of you. I'm going to need both hands to do this. See if I put it there, you can kind of see what I'm doing, hopefully. Yeah, hopefully. Maybe it makes more sense if I do it over here, actually. Either way, here we go. So, crack that egg. Okay. And then I'm going to, with my thumbs, pry the egg apart. Okay, I'm going to pour the egg yolk in 1/2. I can feel the white of the egg seeping down past my fingers. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. Okay, there. I got the white out, and now I'm going to put the yolk into the sugar mixture. Let me show you what the white of the egg looks like. That's not a great shot. It's hard to see with the light that we have, but you know. There you go. I'm going to do another one. Here we go. I'll describe it as I do it in case you missed that the first time around. I'm going to crack this egg. Okay. And the way I did that was just with one sharp gesture on the side of the bowl. Then I'm going to use my thumbs to pry the egg apart, keeping both halves of the egg intact. I'm going to pour the egg yolk into 1/2 of the egg. Do the same thing. I'm just going back and forth with the shell here until I feel that the yolk is all that's left and that the white has slipped down into the bowl below. And I did it. Wow! I'm feeling pretty proud of myself. Got that done. All right, so now I'm going to take those eggs and I'm going to whisk them in. So that's 2 egg yolks, 1 whole egg. You might be wondering, why so precise? Why does it have to be so exact? Well, baking, for starters, is a lot more exact than cooking, which is one of the reasons why I far prefer cooking, is I can improvise more, I can take more chances, and I don't have to worry about the whole thing backfiring. But the other way that we know that this will work is because the folks at Bon Appetit I've workshopped this recipe a ton. So they didn't just take the first recipe they came up with. Instead, they workshopped tons of recipes to come up with one that they feel like was perfect. They took parts of some recipes and parts of other recipes until they ended up with something they really believed in. I love getting to see the way that their test kitchen works. To me, cooking when I was growing up was very prescribed. It was always the same way. I love seeing how they experiment. Maybe you experiment in your kitchen at home, but it took me a long time to develop the confidence to do that. All right, so next, we've got our eggs in there, we've got our vanilla in there. It's time to fold in the dry ingredients. So we're gonna start out with 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. So I'm just gonna tip that in. Some people like to whisk as they go. This is what that would look like. I just put in half of it. And then I'm using my fork again. It's important that you knock a bunch of the flour onto the floor like I always do. I like a fork for whisking. Sometimes I like a whisk for whisking, but particularly I like a fork for this recipe that I'm learning so far, is because I feel like I have a lot more control over it. And also, when I use a whisk, I always find that a lot of the good stuff gets stuck on the inside of the whisk. Okay, that's half of my flour. Let's add the other half. So my cookies, my batter, I should say, is kind of a caramel flavor right now. Or caramel flavor, as some folks like to say, caramel flavor, color. Now it's sort of like a peanut buttery color with all the flour in there, and it's starting to get pretty stiff. That's great. Whew. Perfect. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my, what am I missing? I need my salt. So 1 1/4 teaspoons of kosher salt. I know about how much that is, but you can use your measuring spoons if you want to. So 1 1/4 teaspoons of kosher salt. It doesn't have to be kosher salt. It's just, it is in this recipe. People have different preferences for salt. I use just regular iodized salt for like the first 100 years of my life. I only started using fancier salt when, I don't know why or when. I do like it though. I like the different textures of the salt and all that sort of thing. Okay, here we go. So it's 1 1/4 teaspoons. I think that's about that much. You know me and salt. I feel like salt makes everything better, including dessert things. Okay, we need 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. Now that I am going to measure precisely. So let me grab a 1/4 measurement here, 1/4 teaspoon, and we're going to have 3 of these, 3/4 or 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. Oh my, it's getting hot here. 1, 2, 3. And that part really is chemistry. You can't just improvise on baking soda because it's a leavening agent. That and the eggs are what makes the cookies rise. And so if you don't have them in there, then they won't have any rise at all. They'll just be plain flat pancakes. Okay. Mixing in the baking soda, which is also, by the way, another souring kind of agent. It's another thing that counters the sweetness. If you didn't have any of these kind of bitter ingredients, then your cookie would be just sickly sweet. Just sweet is the only flavor you get. It wouldn't have like that delicious kind of mix of flavors that are in most really great desserts. Okay, time for our chocolate. So I'm using these chocolate chips here. These are, what are these? Girardelli Premium Baking 60% cacao bittersweet chocolate chips. They want 6 ounces. This is a 10-ounce bag, and so I'm going to try and sort of estimate 6/10 or a little bit over half. But I'm not going to sweat it too much because nobody ever complained about their cookie having too much chocolate in it. Or if they did, I never knew them. Okay, that looks about right. So here's what I'm looking at. There we go, there we are. Okay, let's mix that together. can feel that my oven is really working behind me. I'm regretting wearing long pants. Should have been wearing shorts. Perfect. And you don't want to, apparently there's not too much danger of over mixing these cookies. So just make sure you got all the good stuff mixed together. I just want to see what the batter tastes like. I can't help myself. I mean, of course, that's amazing. Okay. Whoa! It's unexpected. If you're making yours at home, you should give it a try. That brown butter mixes together with the vanilla in a way that makes it has an unexpected flavor for me. I said it looked like caramel before, it kind of tastes like caramel too. Okay, so this may be a much less thick batter than you're accustomed to when you make chocolate chip cookies. Part of the reason for that is because we use a bunch of butter and because we use those 3 eggs. So that means there's a lot of liquid in ratio to the flour. So we're going to let that sit, not for long. Time right now is 6:26. I'm going to let it sit just for a few minutes, maybe until like 6:30. At that point, we will notice that the batter has stiffened up just a little bit. So in the meantime, we're going to get the baking sheet ready to go. So here's mine over here. I'm going to make a little bit of room for it over here in my small kitchen. I'm just going to drink these egg whites really normal. Might need that bowl later on, I don't know. There we go. And I'm going to grab my parchment paper. Now, I'm very lucky. I don't use just standard parchment paper. I use actual parchment. This is the parchment on which Hamlet wrote, on which Shakespeare wrote Hamlet. So if you look very closely, you can see, yeah, this is the to be or not to be soliloquy. So this is the kind of parchment that I use, but maybe you use just regular parchment paper. In case you didn't catch it, that is like the lamest joke in the whole world, the kind of joke that you would groan if your English teacher made it, but you probably don't get to see a lot of your English teacher right now. So this is me filling that void for you. You are welcome. Okay. Okay, got my parchment paper. I'm just tearing off enough of it so that it will cover my entire cookie sheet. Now, ideally, I would have 2 cookie sheets because this recipe makes 16 cookies, 8 on each cookie sheet. But I have only the 1 cookie sheet, so I'm going to be doing 2 batches, 1 at a time. And I'm not going to stick around while I bake the second batch. I'm just going to I'll do that on my own time. One nice thing about this kind of cookie batter as well is that while it's helpful if you bake it right away, you can freeze this stuff and then you can come back to it later on. I know some people who even will take cookie batter and they will make it into sort of like a roll. They'll roll it up and then they'll freeze that. Then they can take that out of the fridge. They can chop it up into like cookie-sized things and they can bake that. I doubt the folks at Bon Appetit would recommend that for this particular recipe, but you know, it doesn't hurt to try. I'm not even actually sure if it would work for this because, as I mentioned, this is a much runnier kind of batter than the kind that you would usually use, dough. I keep saying batter because, honestly, it does kind of remind me a little bit of like a pancake batter. It's like a thicker, stickier pancake batter. Now, at this point, I will mention to you that a useful tool would be an ice cream scoop. Because if you have an ice cream scoop, then you have a way of making sure that all of your cookies are a similar size. I don't have an ice cream scoop, so I'm just going to be using a spoon. Let me see if I can pick a good spoon for this job. That one's okay, I guess. Let's see. I'm not going to use a ladle, that's too big. My slotted spoon would not be useful here. Yeah, I think it's just going to be this spoon. So I'm going to do my best. My cookies are probably going to look a little bit sloppy because I don't have an ice cream scoop. If you do, then you should use it. And then later on, show us a picture of your awesome cookies. So if you are one of our meal kit students and you are baking along with us today, One thing I want to let you know is that we are interested in photographs and video, not just of what you're preparing, but you as you prepare it. So it doesn't have to be just like, here's my picture perfect dish. We love failure and project success because every time we fail, we learn something. So we want to see your failures as well as your successes. Like for example, right now I'm failing because I wore long pants, and so I feel like I am melting into a puddle. I'm going to be better baked than these cookies are. So I am displaying my failures for all of you. You owe it to us to display yours to us. So take a picture of your cooking as you're doing it. We love to see you in the picture, but if you're feeling like self-conscious about it, you're like, I don't want to be in the picture, then just take a picture of the cookies instead. All right, here we go. It's been about 5 minutes. Yeah, it's been 5 minutes. And so I'm going to take a scoop of my cookie dough here. And I'm going to place it on my baking sheet. There we go. There's a nice lump there. So still not a very stiff cookie dough. You could probably let this sit for another 5 minutes. So if you're at home and you're baking with us, maybe just let it sit for another 5 minutes and see if it thickens up more. I'm going to do, like I said, 8 on my sheet here. That's 2. I think maybe I'll only put 2 in each sort of row here. What does parchment paper do, James? Parchment paper keeps your baked goods from sticking to your cookie sheet or whatever you're baking with. The other day, I made some banana bread. I used parchment paper, and I also used cooking oil, which might seem a little bit wasteful, but it does help. The cooking oil helps to adhere the, whatever it is that you're baking. Oh, sorry, cooking. It helps to adhere the parchment paper to your baking thing. So in my case, it was a banana bread pan. So the cooking oil helped to stick it there, right? Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2 more. But these look like a mess. I'm sure it's going to be a delicious mess, but a mess. And it may be, these may be really wide. Yeah, if I had the time, I would definitely let this batter sit for longer, this dough sit for longer. There we go. All right, I'm going to shape these a little bit, just because without the ice cream scoop, they are just a puddle of cookie. I will also own that it probably would have been better to do cookies like when it wasn't humid and hot. But you know, here we are. These are just a mess. Well, like I say, show your failures, right? Tastes great. Here we go. I'm gonna throw these in the oven. We're gonna bake them for 8 to 10 minutes. There goes nothing. I can't wait to see what happened. Honestly, my dough is so loose that I will be surprised if those turn out well. But you know, maybe they will. We'll see. Okay, so I'm gonna set my timer. 8 minutes. Now I promised you all that I thought of a way of filling some time while we are baking, and it won't just be me eating cookie dough, although that I'm very tempted to do that right now. It tastes so good. What I'm going to do instead is, instead of just talking the whole time, I'll play you a couple of songs. Let's see. I've been thinking the last couple of days, the last week, have this whole time when we've been in quarantine, it's not even really quarantine, all of us, has been a difficult time. The last few days, the last week has been particularly hard. And so it's gotten me thinking about lots of other hard times in the history of this country and the kind of music that people make during those times. So this song, these 2 songs are about that. The first one I wrote, the second one, not so much. Let's light up the lounges. Let's sing till our voices crackle and burn. Good to get the dirt off Let's cook up some dinner. Fill every room with sweetgrass and bergamot too. Later on we'll drink some burgundy. Please don't go bring me down. It's the evening and nothing's on fire. In the morning we got trouble to burn, but it's sundown. I'm weary and I want to dance. Light up the lodges and give me your hand. Let's call up the neighbors. Don't like what we share the same evil. Send the kids around the neighborhood. Trouble on the horizon. Storm clouds are bunching up. I can't hear the radio. Turn it up and let's put on a show. Please no, don't go bring me down. It's the evening and nothing's on fire. In the morning we got trouble to burn, but it's sundown. I'm weary and I want to dance. Light up the lodges, give me your hand. Oh, give me your hand. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. We're having a party. Dancing to the music. Play like the DJ. On the radio. Cokes are in the ice box. Popcorn's on the table. Me and my baby. We're out here on the floor. So Mr. DJ, keep those records playing, 'cause I'm having such a good time dancing with my baby. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Everybody scream. Sally's doing that twist now. If you take requests, I got a few for you. Play that song called Soul Twist. Play that one called I Know. Don't forget the magic tape. No other songs will do. Let me tell you, Mr. DJ, keep those records playing, 'cause I'm having such a good time dancing with my baby, having all night. Everybody's swinging, yeah, yeah, dancing to the music on the radio. Yeah, we're having a party. Everybody's swinging, dancing to the music on the radio. There you go. That last one's a Sam Cooke song, Having a Party. Let's see how we're doing on our timer. According to this, we still have 2.5 minutes left. And I'm too hot to keep on playing the song. So I'm going to check in on our Instagram feed here, see if anybody needs anything. Anybody has any questions. I'm also going to turn off my my notifications on my computer, which is dinging every half hour. Oh, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. That's really nice of you. Let's see. No questions. Wow, this recipe must really be making a lot of sense to people. I'm curious to see how the cookies look. I can't imagine they look like anything other than pancakes. Let me take a look. They are giant. They're huge. They've taken up like the entire cookie sheet, and they're just like getting bigger and bigger. They're probably going to taste incredible, but they are just going to be like flapjacks. That is all these are going to be. I'm going to make a space for them. Let me see. Where can they live? Mike, I don't know if you saw, but I think on Instagram today, Amy from Project Success posted your picture. So you should check it out. It's when you made the noodles. I think the ramen noodles. Okay, I think I've just about got my, and now I'm gonna, no, I was gonna say I'm gonna do a couple of dishes before I'm done, because I always like it when I finish cooking and I don't have any more work to do, but there's too much of a mess in the sink. I think I'm just gonna have another mouthful of the cookie dough. Oh, it's already gotten stiffer. See, that's so much better already. I should have wasted. I should have waited. Hopefully you waited. Well, it's interesting because the butter was heated up before it was added. It's melted some of the chocolate chips. Or it could just be the fact that it is a sauna in my kitchen. And so probably everything that can melt, including me, is melting. Okay, I think it's just about time. I'm gonna grab my oven mitts here. I love these things. They are made out of some sort of space-age material that keeps my hands from burning even when I've cooked something far too hot. I can smell a little bit of a burn, so it's probably the right time now. The timer is going off. Okay, let's have a look. Look at these! That's amazing. Oh my gosh. Mine did not turn out the same way as Bon Appetit's did. That's not fair. Well, my hypothesis is that I just needed to let the dough go for longer. If I let it sit longer, then as they said in the recipe, it would hydrate the flour, and then maybe we wouldn't get this crazy pancake cookie, which is what I have here. I'm not going to try it yet. I need to let that cool for a little while, and I don't want to burn my mouth. But thank you for tuning in today. I hope you had a good time. Thanks for listening to my songs. We'll be back again next week. Unfortunately, next week will be the last week in the online cooking certificate, at least for right now. We'll see what happens. We will be back again in the fall. There will be a cooking certificate in the fall. I don't know what it's going to look like yet, just because none of us knows what anything is going to look like in the fall. But I promise Project Success will be back with more cooking in the fall, and you are welcome to join us. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a terrific rest of your day. I hope that you're able to enjoy it in coolness and peace instead of like the extreme hotness that I'm currently experiencing. Here we go. I am ending. Yes, I want to end the stream.